nagrywać między sobą. Jest dla Ciebie włączone. Jest włączone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, sorry to break this lively discussion, but I feel we need to start our discussion panel. So let me first introduce our panelists. I feel honored and privileged to have my guests here. Well, we've got Professor Milena Ratajczak-Mrozek from the Economic University of Poznań, Professor Przemysław Hensel from the University of Warsaw, and Professor Wojciech Czakon from the Jagiellonian University, Kraków. And I, Krzysztof Zięba, I will have the pleasure of conducting this panel session, which is entitled A Bumpy Road to Research Success, Pitfalls and Traps. And actually the topic of this panel dictated us whom to choose to invite. We've got eminent researchers here that are pretty aware of probably most pitfalls and traps, who know this bumpy road to research success quite all. They know many bumps, probably experienced them themselves. Let me just mention that we have collected some questions from the conference participants already. But obviously we'll also be open to all the questions that may arise, so questions from the audience are really welcome. This event is also transmitted on our YouTube channel, therefore there is possibility that there will be some questions coming from our online viewers, and Jakub will handle this matter here, and if there are some interesting questions he will surely pass them to me, and we will have the possibility to dwell on them. Okay, so actually this whole thing, this whole panel discussion is so far aligned with the questions we obtained. So there is no any agenda prepared by our guests. We go along the questions, and those questions can be grouped in some, I would say, some dimensions, right? And if we speak of a bumpy road to research success, then the first question, the first problem that arises probably is what is actually this research success? How we would see that? How we would define it? What's the meaning of this term, right? So here comes the first question. Kind of personal, because it's the question that reads like that. What do you see as your main scientific success? Right, so it's very, very much personal to each of our guests, right? We ask about their main scientific success, and I feel tempted to direct this question to Professor Czakon, perhaps.
Perhaps rather surprised. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm not sure if I deserve actually this voice as first speaker about personal success, and that reminds me of a very personal note that Jay Barney gave us 3 years ago in Boston. What he said to a very similar question, but about the discipline of strategic management. He said that his biggest success was that he actually survived in academia. And that's a first lesson. And perhaps I should start here. Well, things change. So along the career, we tend to think that there is one single relevant achievement. And as soon as we defend our thesis, it turns out that it's not so important. As soon as we progress from assistant to associate, it turns out that it hasn't been that important. And then you turn full professor and it turns out that this either has not been that important. So on the moment, on the spot, that's certainly very pleasant. But whether it's enduring, that's another question. So I realized that the things that I used to hold in high esteem, as far as my own record track is concerned, they have the nasty tendency to become passé. Sooner or later, it may take months or weeks. In very rare occasions, it takes years. Another thing that comes to my mind is a note that a very good friend of mine posted on LinkedIn at the end of the year. You know, it's the moment, right, that we make some kind of resumes, and some of us just post how many citations increase, how many grants, how many publications, how many this and how many that. Well, and that's of course very pleasant because it's a metric. But that's not the point. The point is that it starts a kind of cycle where some people post, some other people read, and then they compare, and then they compete, and then we are all of us, overworked. Okay, so this kind of crazy cycle in terms of competing, and moving forwards looks as a trap. We have a question about well-being, I guess, a little bit later. So that, again, is a pitfall. It's not a very fair metric of success. It may become even frustrating. There is always a bigger fish. I mean, no matter how many citations you have, there is always a bigger fish. So the taste of that success is not particularly sweet. Now, there is another option to look at success as the last thing that we've done. It's media style. Okay, we have actually accelerated so much in our careers, and the world turns so quickly that what matters is the last publication, not the one before it. And yes, that's again a pitfall because tomorrow it will not matter anymore. So there is another take I may have on success. That would be the hardest earned. I mean, the number of revisions, the number of comments addressed, and the quality of the journal which accepted a paper. And I do have 2 papers that gave me a big headache, and then I've seen them published. But that again is just part of the road. I hope that there are things ahead, right? So that again seems like a pitfall. So at the end of the day, I think that impact is what matters. If I would have to define success through the lens of what our role actually is, our role is to have an impact on those around us, on managers, on students, on co-workers, on co-authors, on teammates, on junior academics. This impact is measurable. As regards publications, I've already mentioned how much the work is cited, but in a sustained way, not the peaks. In terms of how much does it matter to students, well, if you have your own textbook in your classroom, that's something. Yes, that makes us smile. It's important to us, and it's probably also important to them. But at the end of the day, the impact is about how people around you evolve. And I'm really proud of those who worked with me so far, and I do hope for more. I would stop here, I guess. Too many pitfalls, right?
Quite a few, really. That's right. So it is probably that we should make the impact. We should change. We shouldn't be meaningless. This is what you want to say, right? Okay, Milena, any other thoughts on that?
Well, the question is personal, so I have here probably also the personal story. As an early career researcher, I once took part in the international well-known conference, and as usual, during lunch break, we talked. And then around the table were researchers from different countries, different universities, and two things struck me. First of all, they talked about the research, and actually I did a similar research, but I couldn't share my results because all my results were in Polish, so I simply couldn't share it. And then the second thing was that they all talked about like those well-known journals. Here they were accepted, here were rejected after a second round of review, and so on and so on. And then I somehow felt that I'm not part of the discussion and that I'm more like outlier or outsider there. And this was the moment when I decided that in the future, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I think that my personal success is that now when I attend exactly the same conference, I'm the active participant of the discussion around the table. So this is my personal success, which of course then is related with publications and so on. But simply to feel that you are part of the international research group, even only small international research group, but still.
I'm terribly sorry. Sorry. Probably president of the USA, but I don't take it right now. Thanks a lot for sharing this. I'm sure the audience could see that. I'm not sure if you, Milena, noticed that, but when you are talking about your feelings, all of us three, we started nodding our heads, right? Because that sounds familiar, I believe, right? Many researchers, especially those at the early stage of their researcher career, they feel like that, right? Kind of, do I really belong here, right? Don't I feel a bit like an imposter, right? I'm here, but I do not belong, right? It's a different environment. Perhaps I do not fit in here, right? Yeah, sure, absolutely. You are also nodding your head.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for having me. I just wanted to say that we are asked beforehand to disagree, so now I'm going to disagree with at least some of those points. So first, I would say I would like to redefine the notion of success. That is, in our discipline, everything that we do is perishable. It's going to disappear in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years. There's going to be new research showing that we are wrong. So defining your success in terms of what you have published or your single result, in my view, doesn't make sense. What makes sense is to define your success in terms of the process, that you have learned something, that you have developed. Because we can safely assume that your final result is wrong to some extent. It's wrong. So what matters is that you have upgraded your skills, your understanding of the world, etc. So that's my definition of success. And then about impact. Well, I'm not sure if having impact on society is like a black and white issue, because what if our results are wrong? And they are impactful, but they are impactful for the worse, not for the better. So that's, I'd say, a huge ethical challenge in our work. There's tons of research that has been shown to be wrong in social science, and not just in social science, but we are in social science. And now put yourself in the shoes of those people who conducted that research. They were absolutely certain that they work for the betterment of the society, but in the end of the day, it turned out that no, actually, they made things worse. So yeah, that's the 2 cents I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. You know, the next question that we got from our participant is, one of our participants is you could say a bit specific, because it says, well, what do you see as the main base or some kind of mystery ingredient or key ingredient for your success, right? And as far as I personally do not believe very much in mystery ingredients here, I do believe there is probably some main basis, there is some foundation, and each of us could say, well, there is a kind of cornerstone to the success that I have achieved. Wojtek, what do you think?
Well, before proceeding, I need to disagree with the disagreeing individual, my dear friend Przemek, because he mentioned something that is consequential for the whole debate. Whether we are right or wrong, that category of truth and measurable truth, accuracy, precision, and so on and so on. If we look at research on how much managers are wrong, it turns out that they are always wrong. They are never right. Their perceptions are always misguided, and it does not matter. This is not relevant at all. What is relevant is whether knowledge is actionable to them, whether they can make meaningful links between the cues that they perceive around and the actions that they are entitled and able to undertake. Now, this being said about the single ingredient, the holy grail for success, well, of course, I'd like to say talent and being brilliant, because that would put me in a very, very favorable light. But yes, clearly, out of modesty, I cannot say that. Now, to be fair, there are plenty of people who make me feel like the imposter. You've mentioned Krzysztof before, and this feeling of being somehow out of the main boat that Milena mentioned is something that accompanies us all the time. Now, there's nothing wrong in that. Actually, realizing that we are not in the boat is the driver. I want to be in. Okay? I want to make the effort, and it's going to be painful. So if I had not one but two, but they come together, right? The first one would be determination in pursuing the right boat. And the second one, the awareness that alone it's not going to happen. It's just not an individual task. You may do it. You may waste your life doing it. Why not? It's up to you. Or perhaps you're more brilliant than I ever was. But I think that determination and this conversational or table that Milena mentioned, that's key. You might be the brightest guy, but without the table, you're still the lonely person somewhere in the corner. No impact, no success, no nothing. So let's not be alone. Can we just skip the part and just party?
That's an idea, that's an idea, but I have Julita here, supervising me all the time, so I'm pretty much limited when it comes to my options, unfortunately. And yeah, as they mentioned, this is, thoroughly directed, okay? You may feel like improvisation, they quarrel, no, everything was planned, actually. But by the way, Przemek, do you want to retort?
Yeah, so the plan
sure.
was to now try to somehow respond to what Wojtek said. So you said that the managers are often wrong, yeah, or maybe even always. That's a very strong statement. I wouldn't agree, but we have no time for it. But let's say that they are wrong. But when they are wrong, it's their responsibility. But when we are wrong and we say, look, guys, you have to follow our instruction, then it's our responsibility. So it's an issue of responsibility, in my view. But let's stop at this. And in terms of ingredients of, say, success, I'd say that I agree with Wojtek. It's determination. That's finally we agree on a point. But the second part, I think, is random luck. Like, you have to be lucky. You have to be at the right time and the right place with right people, and you can't do anything about it. That is, I can recall a situation when I was going down the corridor at our faculty. I met my colleague who was walking by with another person I didn't know, and we started to chat, and it turned out that that guy has an access to a database of 20 million cases of something. And I instantly started to talk to him like, maybe I could study that data. And yes, 2 publications resulted from that random meeting, unscheduled, pure good luck. So I'm afraid that good luck is a big part of everything that we do. It's a big part of being successful in managing organizations, and it's a big part of being successful in studying organizations.
Yeah, good luck. That just reminds me of this old joke, you know, about birthday wishes, when someone says, well, I don't wish you actually health or money or being beautiful, just good luck. And the person responds, well, why is that? I'm a bit lousy wishes, right? And he says, well, think of all the passengers of the Titanic, right? They were probably quite young, some of them at least. They were certainly very rich, probably healthy, probably beautiful. They didn't have good luck, right? So good luck might be really an ingredient, right? But it's good that actually Milena grabbed the microphone, because they would quarrel all the time. And there is some hope with Milena here. Milena, what advice would you give? Well, you know, the road to hell is paved with advice, right? What advice would you give to your younger self while knowing what you know today to achieve even more success, or to achieve it earlier?
Oh, well, tricky question. I would say probably 2 things. First of all, do not mind the critique or rejection. And second of all, put much emphasis on building relationships in the academia. So with the rejection and critique, I think this is like the part of the research process, immanent part that we all need to face. And sometimes when we try our best and we face rejection or critique about our research project or the paper that we worked so hard on, we sometimes feel that we have to stop. And then it is important to keep going and keep doing what we wanted to do. And I also think that it is good to remember that critique can be, the kind of constructive critique, the good critique, can be really good for us, and we can really take best from it. And sometimes we should even try to be criticized. So really, like when we prepare the paper, it is good to give it to somebody else and ask for this like so-called friendly but hostile review, and then accept if somebody says there is a nice idea but otherwise, and point, and many more points. And this can really help and help the whole research process if we are open to this critique and we want to take best from it for us. And then, second of all, I think that building, like focusing on networking or on relationships within the academia. Maybe I'm somehow biased because I do research on like business networks and also personal networks, social networks. But still, I really believe in collaboration or cooperation in academia. I think the best ideas come from research, collaboration, and I think it is really important to, from the very beginning, put a lot of emphasis on this, like building these relationships, like taking part, even as simple as taking part at the same conference every single year or every single 2 years. So we meet the same researchers, or visiting the same university every single year. So we really show that we want to be part of the group, and then we meet the same people. We also then have the possibility to show that we can be useful as research colleagues. So these would be the two main pieces of advice. Like, don't mind the critique and focus on relationships.
I believe some could think easier said than done,
Of
right?
course.
Because we especially, I would say especially at the early stage of our careers, but perhaps not only, we tend to take things personally, right? I mean, this is my brilliant idea, and how dare you criticize it so completely, right? It's
I can comment on it. I once took part in some kind of workshop, and the guy who presented it was he took part in these kinds of workshops in different countries, and he said that especially researchers from Poland have really big problems with accepting critique. Like, we almost immediately say, it's not true. I am right, I am right. Like, so from his experience with conducting many workshops with many researchers, he said that researchers from our country are especially tough regarding acceptance of this kind of good critique. I mean the good critique, the one that really wants to helps us, and not just to say it's rubbish and that's it.
And you just made me think what is so special about our country, actually. I mean, that we breed scientists of this particular kind. I hope he simply was wrong, you know. That can't be true. That can't be true, right? Yeah. Przemek, if you imagine that you are younger, but as wise as you are when you are old, you know?
Yes, yes.
So deal with this paradox. And, well, just consider whether you want to pass your microphone to Wojtek later on for some
Of course I
argument
want, yes,
Sure.
yes. I know that Wojtek demands it, right? But, okay, so let's say, I think I can say one thing about that issue. That is the one thing that I would like to know when I was younger was that, is that a huge part of publishing in management, at least, I don't know about economics or finance, but in management is about knowing the informal convention of writing. It's like you may have brilliant ideas, but if you don't know how to frame it in a language, in a structure that is expected by the guys on the other side, you are going to fail. So it's, in my view, to a huge extent, it's about knowing the informal convention. To give you one example of such convention, it's what Americans call a 5-sentence paragraph. Like, they expect that each thought, each idea will be expressed in 5-sentence paragraph. That paragraph may have 10 sentences, but it still needs to have the structure of 5-sentence paragraph, which is the first sentence says, I'm going to show something, you make a claim. In the second and third sentences, you provide the evidence. In fourth sentence, you give additional evidence, and in the fifth sentence, you summarize and say, now I have shown that A leads to B. And oftentimes, I'm sure when you get reviews, you get comments like, oh, your paragraphs are too long, right? Have anybody ever got that kind of a comment in a review? I'm sure that some of you did. So what they really mean is not that the paragraphs are too long. They mean this is not a 5-sentence paragraph. I mean, there might be 8 sentences, 10 sentences, but it's not that structure. So this is one of the examples of informal conventions that are, in my view, the most important part of writing for foreign journals, especially American journals, because European journals tend to believe that there are other people than Americans in the world, and say, okay, so you have 7-sentence paragraph, that's fine with different structure, that's okay. But in American journals, I believe that's a very important thing, to follow their convention. So that's one thing, and I have lost many, many years by trying to sell something that I believe that was interesting, but to them, it was like from a different planet. They couldn't even understand what was the idea or the point. It was obviously my fault, but if I knew the convention, I wouldn't make that mistake, okay? And I'm still not sure if I know every single feature of that convention. But there is a great book that I can suggest. It's writing scholarly articles for European scientists, and a guidebook. I forgot the name of the author, but I can check that. And it's great because it's written from the perspective of an European author, and it overviews all the small things that are so important, but somehow nobody tells us about those small things. Okay, thank you. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I thought that I might just put my few cents to the conversation. Strangely, I agree with both of you. But I also realized that this session dangerously closest to a kind of introspective psychodrama. And so I thought that in that convention I could share perhaps 2 insights that came about to my awareness during the last few years. Regarding what Europeans do and Americans don't, or even what Poles do that others don't, I would say that we have this low degree of mobility in terms of geography and institutions. And I myself realized that when I felt that my time in my previous and first workplace in academia was ripe to move. And I think I realized that too late, way too late. I could have spared myself years of a struggle that is completely irrelevant and nobody gives a crap about this. If you're not happy, you just move on. And that's just as simple as it is. Now, if we look at the mobility that we can see in other countries, and especially those that are particularly successful in science, that's a different world. It's like a Champions League and then a few guys trying to play football, right? So my first advice to myself would be, you're not happy, you just move on. You have to look for environments that would fit your own expectations. If they don't, just move on. It's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean anything about yourself or the others. It's about fit. So look for fit. And that would be the first piece of advice. And the second comes to me, we had this conversation with Beata Glinka 2 years ago at a panel. And that was about writing. I'm not sure our job is about writing, but if it was about writing, I would say, and that was her comment back then, but I still remember it, there are some pieces of paper that I could have spared. There are a few works that I shouldn't have published, ever. And being more focused on the really relevant stuff makes sense. Think about the big names in our business. the real big names, they only had one good idea. One. Think about Jay Barney. He realized that resources matter. And that's all. Nothing more. Think about Thies. He realized that dynamic stuff matters without being more specific. Think about Chesbro. He realized that ideas are everywhere, not just in one given organization. And you can make the list as long as you wish, depending on your own field of interest. So it's somehow crazy to move on with ideas and jump to new ideas. Stick to the one good idea. And then don't write the bad papers.
Okay, so I already said something, but I wanted to add one thing. That is, yes, I need to agree with.
Keep
Okay.
No,
alright,
if
so-
she wants one, she can get one from me. She simply wanted to take it from me.
Yeah, I think we cannot emphasize enough how important that mobility is that Wojtek mentioned. That is, many years ago, I woke up one morning and realized that I spent 99% of my life 5 kilometers from the hospital in which I was born. Like, I'm like a medieval peasant farmer. Like, I can go anywhere, but no, this is my village, and yes, I was born over there, and I do not go anywhere, right? So as soon as I realized that it has to change, that I need to go to other places too. Maybe they are not as great as my neighborhood, but still you can learn something, okay? So yes, I just wanted to emphasize that this is a very important point.
No, Milana didn't want to say anything. Yeah, but actually my next question is back at Przemek. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have it in this scenario. Oh my God.
Okay.
What a shame.
Okay, yes.
No, that was actually Agnieszka who said I should change all the questions, actually. Here we come. Now we're moving to another dimension, a little bit different, I called that struggling to succeed. Przemek, the question will be long.
Okay, but I have it.
You do.
Perhaps people should.
Yeah, sure. Let's still pretend you don't have it. Would you recommend any approach on how to effectively combine lecturing, administration, and research and publishing so that one can consider himself or herself successful as a researcher? And a brief note here, the system is promoting us only for research.
Okay, thank you. So to the question, would you recommend an approach? I say no. I don't know. I don't know any approach to balance that. But I think the very idea of combining and balancing, all those elements is wrong. That is, first, it's impossible to be great. I mean, except Wojtek, but it's impossible to be great at research, great at teaching, and spend lots of time on administrative work. It's simply impossible. We have only one lifetime. So my suggestion is to have it like in phases, like you focus on research for a couple of years, and then maybe you put more focus on teaching, and then maybe you put more focus on administrative work, which means that for 2/3 of your time you do not put much attention to teaching or administrative work, etc. But I believe that's the only way to go. At least I haven't found any solution to be great at everything, or at least maybe one thing, I don't know.
That is great. I'm pretty sure that if Przemek said he couldn't find the solution, then Wojtek would say he has.
Now I have to.
Yeah.
Now I have to, and I want to thank you for your kindness, Przemek. That was really, I appreciate.
Let me say that what I said would mean that I'm no longer employed if I said that in US, for instance, right? Because you need to pretend that you cover all the bases all the time.
And that's a fair point, actually. what Przemek, I guess, means is that we have competing demands, and the question underlies a logic of competing demands within limited resources and assets that we have. Now, clearly, if we specialize, there makes no sense to have bad cards in the portfolio. That is really stupid. It's counterproductive, first of all, but productivity is perhaps not the only measure. Now, regarding paradoxes, we can do 3 things, actually, or 4. One is we can give up. And that's actually an option that is very popular in academia. People are not responsive to whatever comes about, be it from their own dean, be it from legal constraints. They just don't respond. That's an option. I'm not sure it's a good option, but it's a very popular option. Now, there is a second option. Do what you're best at and keep in mind that you will cease being best at it. It's not given forever. You're just not going to be a brilliant researcher for the whole of your career. There will be a moment where, for various reasons, others will catch up and then move faster. So that's the second option. Instead of a balance, have a sequence, right? And this one is also popular, especially in those countries, and this is not Poland, that reward most managerial positions at academia. If you want to earn a lot of money, the best you can do is to become rector or provost or president. In that position, I said not in Poland where you were absent. But I'm not sure this option is given to everybody, given the burden it entails. Now, there is a very, very small proportion of people who can handle all of it. Very, very small proportion. And that capacity would be called ambidexterity. There are some people who are able to do that. I'm not one of them, definitely, and I wouldn't like to be one of them. So I will stick with option number 4, which is basically separate in space those who do administration and make sure that they never meet those who do research, and make sure that they never meet those who teach. Because if they meet, it's going to end up in conflict. Thank you.
That's a good idea, actually. The previous question was about kind of combining many aspects of our work, right? Or at least perhaps not our work, but what we are sometimes forced to do within our work. But the second question in this group of questions is how to balance research and teaching and well-being and family for early career researchers. I mean, perhaps not only early career researchers. This is probably for each and every one of us, right? So we go out in a wider way. It's not only our teaching, it's not only our research, our well-being, our family, how to reconcile that, right? And the hint was, well, especially women. And, well, since Milena was the only one, we both...
How do you know?
Yeah, well, that is my expectation, actually, only my expectation. But we thought, well, she could handle this, but then you already know Wojtek, right? Wojtek said, yeah, what? Come on, I want to say that, right? I want to speak about that as well. Let's not be very sexist. All right, we won't be. But ladies first, Wojtek, okay?
Okay, so yeah, I want to emphasize as much as possible that in my opinion, complete like work-life balance in academia is impossible.
Thank you for saying so.
And probably, I don't know how men feel, but especially for women and who have, for example, kids, it is even more impossible, I would say. It doesn't sound optimistic, I know, but I think we have to admit it. Somehow we live during the times well, we are not celebrities, but we live in a similar context. I mean, you open any like Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other social media, and you see your colleagues who just post here is my new paper here is my award, here is my success there and that. And additionally, you will see like nice family pictures from the holidays, and you have the feeling that they have it all and that you are the only one that struggles. And I think we have to admit that I think it is impossible we can try our best, but we will never have it all, and we will always somehow feel behind in one area or another. And this is good to admit it, especially then later on when I recently talked to several colleagues from different countries, and in my opinion, they all are like very successful, and it seems they're all very happy. And then we talk, and then I know that here is somebody who is struggling with depression. Here is somebody who is going through a divorce. Here is somebody who is very successful, but I know that he or she, they are working like every Saturday and every Sunday with really, I am asking like, so where is this nice family time there that I see on the picture? So I think we have to admit it simply, and this is important to say it. I also sometimes hear my colleagues say that, oh, I see that you do a lot in the administrative work, you have your family, and then you publish, so you have it all. And I always say, no, I definitely don't. You only see like this very small amount of my life, and you do not see all the struggles and what is happening probably in the 90% of my time. And I think one of the very important issues is to talk about it openly, because to be more optimistic, it is also good to be aware that everyone struggles, and probably, well, maybe there are people who have it all, but that usually when we look at it in these like social media or when we read about our colleagues, this is only part of the stories, and that they all have part of the problems. It is also good for me to have also like good friends and colleagues in the academia, in the research world, because they understand your problems. Like you can talk, it is good to have this kind of support group. Even like, for sure, like researchers here from Poland will relate to it. Like you need to have somebody who understands that no, you don't have 3 months of holiday vacations in summer. You actually are working during that time. So it is good to have this kind of support group. It is also good to set some kind of priorities and sometimes make the like conscious decisions. Like there are different seasons of life, and sometimes the decision can be that, for example, now it is more like my focus is on my family, and I accept that there will be not too many papers or even no papers or no new research projects during that time. Or sometimes just to finish, I remember when I worked on the habilitation book, then I said to my family, this year will be difficult, but I know I have to finish it during this year, so simply I will be much more in research and I will be much more working, but I know I want to finish it during this year. So just to make this like conscious decisions and set the priorities.
Thanks for what you said, because actually, Wojtek, the next one, yeah, sure. Because what I find really valuable what you said is we should be able sometimes to cut ourselves some slack, right? To let it go, not to be perfect, in every single aspect, right? No matter what is the pressure, right? I believe that goes to the same for women and for men. Obviously, we are playing with some stereotypes here. You know, this husband lying on a couch watching TV and the wife coming saying, you know, I've got so many things to do. I've had so many duties. And he says, well, darling, if you choose to sleep at night, no wonder that your duties accumulate, right? So, but I believe this is difficult for both women and men, but I'm not sure what Wojtek would say to that.
Nobody knows that, even myself. Now, I think this question is very provocative because of the ideological perspective it forces us to take. And that perspective would be that genders have different positions. Of course they have. Of course they do. If we continue in that ideological realm, we will realize that there are also transgender people. What about them? Okay? They are absent of that conversation so far. What about non-binary people? They are completely absent from that conversation. Why? Why do we have to have work, life in family terms? There are people who do not have families. Why are they absent from that particular conversation? So if we continue on the ideological realm, there is a big quarrel at the end. So I'm leaving it right there. What I'm taking from this ideological perspective is that there are different patterns. And this being said, of course, it's impossible to find a balance meant as an equilibrium of conflicting forces. It's always moving. Now, the lessons learned are, first, if for early stage researchers, research is not a priority, they will fail. It's not a likelihood, they will fail. Every single doctoral student that considers research as a hobby or a second priority will fail. That will happen. So the best you can do is prioritize. And clearly at early stages it's easier for young people without that many family commitments. And then it's probably wiser to prioritize on family. I mean, really, if you think about this as a race, so there is a target to be hit it as fast as you can. And then you're free to go, or free to choose whatever you want. Think about it. In academia, there are very, very bad and precarious conditions of work. Very bad and very precarious. So there's no money, clearly. There is absolutely no time. Everybody has expectations. Nobody pays for them. That's interesting, right? The reviewers had a long list of expectations. They never pay for it. The publishers, even more extensive list, never pay for it. Students, they expect whatever without providing 1/10 of your effort, right? Everybody, so it's a nasty place. Well, in that nasty place, there is one position that still is defendable. And that position that is still defendable, not that many can actually enjoy it, but I wish you all could, and I'm crossing fingers that you all will, is full tenured professor. If you are full tenured professor, you're relatively better off, okay? So
in US.
not even there, but you can try. Yeah. It's definitely better than being a doctoral student. So it is a race, but it's not a race for a prize, it's a race for a position that comes with responsibility and all that stuff. But nobody's, I would say, astonished or perplexed when a professor takes time to reflect. Okay, so I will take time to reflect now.
I'm still reflecting, so I can't say anything. But well, I do not have any advice because I'm imbalanced, so I really don't know how to balance things. And this is that issue of impact, right? You say something, then some people may believe that you know what you are saying, and then they do stupid things because you said something stupid. So I pass on this question. Thank you.
I would just add to this question a little bit because we talked a little bit about some family commitments. And on the other hand, we also talked about the need for mobility. And as we know, those two hardly go together, right? I mean, you can imagine, well, certainly Wojtek can imagine some situations when that's perfectly okay. But sometimes it's not. And they don't know what to say. No such entry into scenario, you know, and they are all gone.
I think this is very difficult. It depends on a particular person, but yes, I agree that, like, I know colleagues, both men and women researchers, who, although they had like family and kids, they still like went somewhere abroad for like several months, and only like coming back home once a month and seeing the family, and otherwise seeing the family online. And I cannot criticize that. If it works for this particular family, this is okay. But I know that for many, it is one very, very strong bias why there is lower mobility. In my particular case, this is exactly the reason why pre-pandemic times, I really enjoyed going for like research visits, but my maximum amount of time was 2 weeks. It could be more often during the year, but 2 weeks were maximum. Otherwise, it was simply impossible to find a solution. I have one very lucky colleague who was able to go for the Becker Foundation scholarship to USA with 3 kids. But she was so lucky that she found, she was taken by the university in the USA, and her husband's work, it was possible that her husband also moved for his work to USA for exactly the same time. Then it was like the perfect situation, and like everyone was like, you are the lucky one, that it is possible for you. So I think it is a very big problem that we are expected to travel a lot. We can also like to do it, and we see advantages of it, but it is hard to balance.
Yeah, I guess so. And everyone is nodding their heads, okay. The last question in this section, and this is a question, you know, that kind of provokes me to share my personal story. When I graduated from the university, and actually I didn't have any particular plans for my future career, I came back at the university to collect my master's diploma. And I saw the announcement, they are hiring for assistant lecturer. And then I thought, well, that is actually something. And I visited my master's supervisor, and some of you know, that was Professor Piotr Dominiak, our dean at that time. And well, I simply came to him with this simple question. I said, Professor, I saw this announcement. Do you think I could apply? Would I be the right person? Because I never planned that, actually, right? It was never my plan to become a researcher. And he looked at me as if I said something silly. That was unpleasant, but on the other hand, that was, you know, a good feeling, because he said, yes, of course. right? And since I respected him a lot, that gave me a lot of confidence, even overconfidence, actually, now then I think of that. You know, the third question here is how to know this path is not for you. Because you may try to, you know, to struggle to achieve the success, but okay, you know, this is yeah, they have no plan around. Yeah, they are in despair. You can see it. Okay, yeah, sure. So I will talk a little bit. They will decide upon something. Okay. And, you know, this is this problem. You know, you have a student, for instance, and you do not believe. I have this kind of situation. Okay, I will give you some time, right?
I am ready.
I've got a PhD candidate, kind of, and I know he is not able to, simply. And I find it extremely difficult to look him straight in his eyes and say, yeah, sorry, man, I may be mistaken, but it's not for you. I can't see you here. This is extremely tough, right? So as far as I was lucky, someone told me, yeah, you're going to be good. He didn't know what he was saying, but yeah, okay. How to distinguish whether the struggle for success makes any sense, or should you just give up?
Yeah. We all want to give up this question. Well, I don't know the answer when it is not for you. Maybe I would answer when I think you can believe that it is for you. It is when you like constant development, like doing new things and approaching new things. I also think that this is for you when you like working with younger people, because this is one of the advantages for me of this kind of work. But at the same time, it is also only for you when you are ready to accept that the results of your work will be very often much postponed in time, and that it means both like this kind of like research results, like the effects in terms of papers, for example, or of projects, but this will be also in terms of money. You need to accept that, especially as an early career, at the beginning of your career, and if you are not having any like additional research projects, etc., when you meet your colleagues from business, you will be not the one that earns more or even similar, probably. So you need to be ready that this is a process that takes time. Yeah, and probably you need to be able to do several things at once. We talked about this, like managing teaching and research and administration. There are several issues that you have to manage at once. So yeah, this would be probably to answer when it is for you, and maybe my colleagues will say when to know it is not for you.
Okay, so I think it's quite easy to say, in my view, that is, if what you do seems boring to you, then it means it's not for you. And if you find it interesting, then you may still try. So that would be the first part of the of the answer. And the second part is that I would like to comment on, say, the system, the academic system that we have, and compare it with, for instance, the American system, which is quite crazy in many respects, but it has one advantage, that is, if it's not for you, they eliminate you very quickly, and you don't need to like go hurt and still have a hope that you are going to make it. No, they are just a couple of years after the doctorate, and if you cannot make it, then off you go, which is a disaster in a sense, but then your investment is reduced. Like, you don't need to spend more time on something that is not going to be successful. In our system, sadly, you can like limp through your entire career for 50 years without realizing that maybe there is a better future for you somewhere else. Because I believe that people for whom it's not, like academia is not for them, would be very successful in a different line of work. So it's like a matter of mismatch, like wasting good resource on something that requires something something different. So perhaps we should spend more time on thinking how to make the system more helpful, rather than on agonizing on how should I know whether that's for me or not. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's quite challenging. So I will return you the favor. Przemek said a few minutes ago to be very careful when giving advice to people, because this advice may be bullshit, actually. And even worse than that, it may be harmful. So I'm trying to think of what exactly could I say, but...
Reflecting.
Yeah, reflecting. But now, jokes apart. I think that the clock of time is ticking, and recently it has been ticking very, very fast. Things do not change in an incremental way. They do so from time to time abruptly. If you allow me a distraction, we have seen something unprecedented in Europe's history over the last 56 days in terms of the attitude regular, normal Polish people have shown to our Ukrainian neighbors. This is not a state-organized, administration-led effort. It is generosity, but it is more than generosity. It is resourceful generosity. So for all of us who think, and I'm guilty of it too, that productivity and amassing resources is the key target, no, no longer. That is not anymore the key target. So the question is, what is the next target? And there are a few answers to that. None of them is directly measurable in terms of financial metrics such as GDP growth or citation counts.
Germans can do it.
They can. And here we come. And they are probably not the happiest nation in the world. So to make the very long story very, very short, if this doesn't make you happy, just stop it.
As simple as this. Okay, that was a really fine ending here to this part of our discussion. Now let's move to technicalities. There are some questions that are really very technical, actually. You know, there's a question, for instance, how to properly identify relevant research gaps for useful research. And with so many adjectives like relevant, like useful, well, the answer is perhaps not that very easy, is it?
Of course it is.
I knew that.
I have to disagree today, otherwise after lunch everybody's going to be sleeping. Now, a few years ago, when I was starting my habilitation journey, I was not in a very friendly environment, I have to say, which was good because it was pushing me towards being more convincing and more to the point that I would probably normally would be. At that time, I realized that we do not have, and we did not have at that time, and when I say we, it's not Polish community, I don't mean Poland as academia, I mean Europe, and even beyond that. We didn't have this magnificent, super simple but powerful tool that is called systematic literature review. I was the first to write a paper about how to do it. And then I was in my own community that was researching competition at that time, the first to publish a systematic literature review. Crazily, it became contagious. Since then, and it was 10 years ago, we had already 7 systematic literature reviews, which is interesting because if you want to run another one, there is a big question. Why do we need a SLR number 8, right? And that gives a lot of comfort to every scholar engaging in that path, because you can refer to systematic literature reviews already there. So one way to do is take a look at the landscape and look for interesting stuff, right? Interesting for yourself, to make a link to our previous question. Now, there is another way to look at things, and Jay Barney as an exemplar, an icon of the different way of looking at things comes to my mind. The currently established theories are typically naive because theories are meant to be abstract and simple, so they are naive. And what they say is a simple message. What if that message is wrong? And then think about the innovation theory by Clayton Christensen. The innovation theory, in short, said that an innovation comes about if it is better as compared to what we had before. And then Christensen said it's bullshit. It's just not true. What comes next is typically worse as compared to the established product. It's interesting. So this other, completely different from just looking at the literature approach, would be problematize. Be a thinker. Don't just be a craftsman. Be a thinker. And now there is also a path number 3, and I think this one is about relevancy, more of a professor job than of a junior researcher job. The best option is when there is a team working on something, okay? And then people can integrate that team. And it works also for international communities of researchers. So from time to time, it is also good to stop thinking, stop reading, sit by the table. What was about the table? And drink some wine? That was your point? Right. Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's inevitably what's going to happen this evening, you know. Nevertheless. Milena, any insights on that?
I think it is always difficult to find a relevant research gap. It comes hand in hand with the matter that, like, in management, there is never this kind of like complete newness of the idea, at least in my opinion. Yes, it is new, but what you actually said, like, these theories are partly naive. Like, even when you read about it, about the resources, for example, you read about it and you are, well, actually, this is obvious. But I'm then impressed that somebody had the capability to write about this obvious thing in a way that it is now that everyone is writing about it. So I think it is really a talent to be able to do it, but eventually it doesn't sound so completely new. I always say, like, in chemistry, you take 3 different like formulas, you combine them, and then you have something like completely new that no one expected. In management, we tend to describe things that already are there, and we tend to explain these things. I believe that a good idea is if you really need ideas, like to go for, like, attend conferences, relevant conferences, and then listen to the presentations, but also be active participant at the table, including at the wine table in the evening. It is also good to read, like, simply just 1 or 2 relevant journals for your area of research, to see what is going on there, and also to read calls for papers, because these are quite a lot of times a nice way of inspiration. And then it is simply good to talk to people, and including managers. If we want to have a contribution in terms of management or entrepreneurship, you need to talk to people in order to find this research gap, something that there is a problem that maybe is not well enough addressed yet.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. That was Alan that mentioned context, and that context is very important. He was speaking of entrepreneurship, but in many contexts we do face a question: how much is enough, right? And when it comes to doing research, this type of question may be rephrased as: how much literature review is enough? How much is sufficient? Przemek, how much?
Okay, so
1 page, 2 page?
Even though I volunteered to answer this question, I'm not sure if I understand it. So I will provide two answers. That is, if the person who asked this question meant how much literature should I read, then the answer is obviously you should read everything. So that's an easy answer in my opinion.
A bit devastating as well, probably,
Yes,
to the person
yes.
that asked.
But if the question was about literature review in a paper, in a manuscript, I think that might be the intent. Then my opinion is that there should be no literature review. There should be only theory development. And that's a very common mistake in papers that are produced in our country. That is, people have that section literature review in which they say, so Frederick Winslow Taylor in 1918 said something, and then they go up until 2021, and for no reason, because this is not the goal of that section of the paper. The goal of that section is to have a theoretical framework that shows the causal mechanism and allows to formulate hypotheses. So it may be 3 pages if it's like super dense and you're with references to published research and with and your logic of argument is very strong. Then 2 pages, maybe that's enough. Of course, in some cases it may require more pages, but it's I just wanted to emphasize that it's not about a literature review. It's about theory building that leads to hypothesis and that causal mechanism. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And
yeah, a little add-on. I'm not sure that just a hypothesis development is the only option. There are many other options. But as with happiness that I mentioned before, there is probably a gauge. When you read again what you've written and you're bored, then don't show it to anybody. It's too much or not good enough.
Seems to be a very useful rule of thumb here. Okay. The last question, which I also included in this technicalities path, is actually very general, and I'm not sure if it's easy to answer. On the other hand, that gives you a lot of freedom of what to say. Because the question is simply how to be successful in publishing articles in the best management journals, right? So actually that could be the main topic of this whole conversation if we assume that publications are the research success, but we didn't want to put the equation mark here between those two, right? So how to be successful in publishing articles in the best management journals, how to fasten a publication time in top and reputable journals. This is not an easy question, probably, Milena. You already started laughing. Yeah, but say something, please.
I will say something. First of all, I will start from the end. I think with the top reputable journals, this will always take time. like top reputable journals, it doesn't happen fast. So we have to simply like accept it. I don't think that I am the best one to say like only how to be successful in publishing articles in the best management journals. Maybe it is better how to even like start and then keep going and keep publishing in good management journals. I would say, like, as an advice, for me, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of collaboration with the researchers, especially also if I believe that if somebody has no experience at all with publishing in the top journals, those like top international journals, with no experience, I simply would not try to publish there, because I think it is possible, but it is really almost impossible for me. I think for the first time you need to find somebody who already has experience. This can be, or maybe this can be only your like supervisor or your advisor, or maybe it is good really for the first time to team up with somebody who already knows the process, who knows all the traps, and then if you join another researcher, it is then so much easier to learn, because you learn from somebody who already knows it. You also learn from somebody who knows that, for example, like rejection is nothing so bad. This was actually somebody what I have learned from my first collaboration within the international like research group. When we prepared the paper, we submitted it to the top journal and we got rejection. And for me, this was like, oh, it is rejected. It was like everything was bad. And then from the experienced researchers, of course, they were not happy. But for them, it was okay. So let's see what we have to change. Let's change it and submit it to another top journal. So this is really like learning from somebody who knows is very important. I also believe, like more like if we are asked about technicalities, like very practical advice is also if you to at least once try to attend this kind of paper development workshops that are run by top journals. This can be hard process or difficult process because they are focused on the constructive critique, but at the same time you can learn a lot, and usually or a lot of times these can be perceived as like first step within this publishing process in the top journal.
Yeah, thanks very much. No, you are not in the script. You don't have to speak. No, that's okay.
You don't have to. Okay, I skip it.
Okay, so
yeah, go.
So just wanted to say one thing, that is about 10 years ago, Arthur Bedeyan and colleagues ran a survey of top professors at top American institutions, asking them about questionable research practices that they engage in. And about 85% said, 85, it's like pretty much virtually everyone said, that they know people who develop ins with editors in order to make the publication possible, okay? And maybe it's like an overestimate, but on the other hand, I think we miss, if we are talking about publishing in good journals, we miss a very important element of that. That is, if you have journals published in the United States, they primarily serve the local market, which means that they know each other. When they get a submission from University of Chicago from person such and such, they know that's a doctoral student of my friend or someone else's friend. when they get a submission from Grzegorz Brzęczyszczykiewicz from Poland, it's like some strings of letters, right? It doesn't mean anything to them. So I don't want to say that they are biased against us. Maybe they are, but this is not what I want to say. My idea, my suggestion is that we should try to get to know them, not to bribe them, but so just so they have the ability to put a face on the name, like, oh, I met that guy during that or other paper development workshop, as you said. So I concur. That's a very, very important point. So we are not just Grzegorz Brzęczyszczykiewicz. I mean, sorry if there is any Grzegorz, but you get my point. My second name is Grzegorz, so okay. Thank you.
Now we have checked the list, actually. Before I allowed you to say about Grzegorz Brzęczyszczykiewicz, we don't have one, so you were safe all the time. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, keep it. Okay, yeah, absolutely keep it. Because actually, my next question goes a little bit in line with what Przemek said. What Przemek said is, it's better not to be anonymous, right? Avoid anonymity. And the last section of the question, the last set, was something that I entitled "Honestly Speaking." So this is a kind of obligation for you, right? Do not lie to us. Przemek, honestly speaking, have you ever had to review a manuscript from a colleague? And do you think personal biases affect such review process?
So if we are talking about reviews for foreign or international journals, no, I haven't reviewed a paper from a colleague. Are there biases? Yes, it's all a biased process. It's bias and nothing else. Some people say that the correlation between two reviews for one paper is about 0.12, like very low. That is when one reviewer says it's a great paper, the other says, no, just forget it. So it's a biased process for sure, but I volunteered to answer that question because I wanted to say something maybe unethical, that is, we should be biased. We should be biased when we review papers that we perceive come from, say, this area of the world. Poland, maybe some other countries. It would be fashionable to say Ukraine, but I mean, from this part of the world. And why? Because I think our point of view is totally underrepresented in good international journals. There's only a tiny, tiny amount of such work, and lots of that work is conducted by Polish scholars, but it's not about Poland or Eastern Europe or this part of the world. So in order to balance that problem, I mean, to make the field more balanced, I think we should be a little bit biased. I mean, I do not suggest that you get for a review a paper that is, complete bollocks, and you say, this is great because that's from Krakow, for instance. No, when I happen to review papers from this part of the world, I try to be like 10% more benign or less critical, which is very difficult for me because I tend to criticize everything, but I try to step back and say, okay, maybe these guys should get 5-10% advantage, like a little bit higher chance of getting a publication, if it's a paper with a potential, okay? So, who's next?
Whoever wants to.
Okay, I'm not very comfortable with the term biased because of what I said before. It's not whether our perceptions or our attitudes are accurate, they are not. And it's not about whether they are precise or not, because they are not. It's about whether they are actionable. And I believe that what Przemek meant was not just being benign, but also pushing. I think that there is a lot of potential that is underexploited, and this goes also for authors from Spain and France. They struggle too, actually. because they'd never received appropriate training in these tricks in terms of how to frame a publication or how even to frame modern research. They do 20th century research, but not 21st century research. So pushing is a good idea. Now, second, I come back to this ethics perspective that Przemek provoked us to keep in mind. I think that integrity is oftentimes questioned because I know this person or that person. I find it unacceptable, actually. From the fact that I know a person doesn't mean that I probably don't. That's a good one. But it doesn't mean that my professional integrity is undermined. And even such a suggestion needs to be substantiated. Now, being practical, when you run a special issue, of course you know everybody. And of course you have to review as a third reviewer or even as a second most of the papers. So that's one. When you collect an anthology, like 40 papers or something, 40 chapters, of course you know everyone. And of course it's very much more productive to have them review each other rather than looking for a set of 80 reviewers extra community, which is improbable in itself, right? So if you have a focused topic, it's clear that everybody knows everybody, and it does not imply any negative automatic reduction of professional integrity. And third of all, what Milena said is, I think, very, very helpful also. Friends tend to be hostile, but they are still friends. Okay? So receiving a hostile review is a gift, actually. It is a gift, because that friend would tell you where exactly the bullshit is. And we'll avoid at least one desk rejection, which is already a lot. Thank you.
Anything? No. All right. Okay. The next thing. There is one question, actually there are two questions. I'm not sure if they are connected. If I understand them correctly, they are not. Is there a place for individuals and masters in academia, apparently? Maybe there is time to build teams of effective professionals in a narrow field. As I say, these are two questions that to me, they seem a little bit disconnected, but I would actually ask Przemek about those individuals and masters, and you provoked me because you said it took you a lot of time actually to discover this informal convention, right? So this is a lot of sweat and blood, right? On your account, actually. And I can imagine that if you were to cooperate with some guru, you know, some master, he would grab you by the hand and said, little Przemek, this is the path to follow. Just follow me, right? And that would save you a lot of work, disappointment, perhaps some of the personal development as well, right? But it would be kind of easier. So do we still have place for master and individual, master and student cooperation? Should we have such place?
Well, I believe that the second question is more interesting, but I would try to say something about masters and students, master and students. That's the phrase. Well, I had an opportunity to work with certain master for a very short period of time, and it happened late in my career. But it was like a super big guy. And the trouble with masters is that they don't know that they know. I mean, those things like those conventions, they are natural to them, so it's difficult for them to explain to you. You should use 5-sentence paragraphs because it's like they do not see any other option. Like that's natural to them. So, so that's my answer to your question. But the second part, maybe there is time to build teams of effective professionals in a narrow field. I believe this is the direction that our discipline is going to get from now on. I mean, in adjacent disciplines, for instance, psychology, you see more and more papers that are co-authored by 50 people because they have 20 experiments run in 11 locations, and you simply can't do it. Even if you have like two cooperators, you won't be able to conduct that kind of study. Or recently, with a professor from our faculty published a paper with 200 co-authors, right? And it was published in Nature, Human Behavior. So a very good outlet. But I think this is a direction that is, for too long, management and organization theory was like, you know, something for gifted kids and gifted artists. I have an idea for a painting and I'm going to paint it in my studio and then show it to the world. I mean, that's one approach. It makes sense when you have that idea, but most of the time, as Wojtek said in the beginning, most people have just like one good idea in their lives. So, okay, you have painted that beautiful individual work, and then what? Then what? For the next 30 years, you do what? You can participate in those teams that may be made of, say, 20, 50, or 60 people. And I see more and more of that kind of research in other disciplines, social science disciplines, very little in our discipline, for whatever reason, but I think that there is a huge potential for this kind of work.
Well, when I was a kid, there was this game. No, it was about karate. And so the game was to kick the ass of many opponents in order to save Princess Mariko. I remember Princess Mariko because the name sounded bizarre to me. But before liberating Princess Mariko, I had to kick the ass of the big boss. Okay? And that was very frustrating because games at that time pushed you back to the beginning. It was not that you reiterate the last stage. You lose to the big boss, you start from the beginning. The reason why I'm saying this is because, make no mistake, masters are those who win. Okay? I don't think that it is useful in our conversation to include those who used to win, but now are out of the ring. It's good that they used to win and that they have a brilliant record track, but I need a winner. So this question connects with the first one about success, and the second part about teaming up, right? Let's be pragmatic. Perhaps it's not a master, but if he or she wins, why not? I want a winner. And that's something that we oftentimes lose from sight. Victory means different things, success means different things, and individuals able to push us in the right directions might be also different. So a master may mean different thing, but without going to conferences and those tables with the wine, it's very difficult to identify who that individual is.
One last question, one last answer, just a short one, and just from one person. Milena, I will ask you, how to effectively team up for research projects and papers? Two pieces of advice, or three?
2 pieces of advice.
Yeah.
First, I really emphasize the importance of teaming up, of collaboration, but then, so first advice, you need to choose the researchers that you work with carefully. This is what Wojtek said. I have experience with working with my friends, researchers, and I have both good and bad experiences. And I must say, with every research project, research collaborations, the problems, some kinds of problems will definitely arise. There is always not enough of time, somebody does not their work right, and then working with a friend and saying to a friend that maybe we don't want to collaborate anymore, is really difficult. So I would say the first step is the most important one. Think not in terms of who you like, but who the potential winner is. Do you know like the way they approach research collaboration? And for me, this would be the advice number one that really sets the whole collaboration later on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I believe that you gave really great, huge, inspiring answers to all the questions, actually. I could squeeze in one or two questions from the audience if necessary. And it seems to be necessary, so I will share my mic, okay? Yeah. Stay strong, okay? Stay strong.
Thank you very much. Maybe it's not very necessary, but I will try. Marek Matejon, University of Łódź. Thank you very much for these great presentations. It was very inspiring. And we have visible proof that you are real humans. So, because you shared with us many personal thoughts and personal experiences. One comment, one question. First comment. I think comment is related to the first part, a part about career development and research, career development as researcher. We represent management sciences, especially entrepreneurship field, and I think that during our career development, we should use more managerial techniques, managerial tools, managerial approach, entrepreneurial theory. For example, for me, it is very useful to think strategic about my career development as a researcher. I think about myself, I hope so, as entrepreneurial researcher. So it is very useful for me to use all these approaches in career development. This is only a comment, but maybe you will be so kind to comment my comment. And the question is, you share with us many different examples of pitfalls, problems, challenges in career research, career development. For example, Milena told us about her fellowships. The longest took 2 weeks. Professor Hensel tell us about publications in teams. Yes. So let's reverse the side. How do you deal with these challenges, and how you assess these challenges when you serve as reviewers in promotion procedures? Yes, because for example, I discovered such an opinion that 2 weeks fellowship is not a fellowship. It's not a serious fellowship. It's only 2 weeks. It is impossible to do anything valuable during these 2 weeks. Yes, when you have publications, co-author publications, you are not a serious researcher, because in Poland you have to have a publication, a single authorship publication. So it's very nice that you share with us these problems, but how do you assess? How do you deal with these problems when you assess someone else? Thank you very much.
Okay, regarding the fellowship. I think you have to accept it. I cannot do anything more about it. I cannot make it longer. But my solution was, again, I say pre-pandemic, but I hope next year I will continue, was that I used to come to the same university every single year for 2 years. And we also had contact in between. And then also presenting it was presented always as continuous. Exactly. And this really also, helped. It also helped my stay at the university, because then it was always the impression, oh yes, this is Milena, she is always coming here during like spring. Maybe it is 2 weeks, but then these were like intense 2 weeks with many meetings and everything. But because I came back and it was not only one visit, I really have many friends till now, and I have many effective like research projects and results right now. So, but some struggles you have to accept that it is there, and you cannot change it. If I have to evaluate somebody, I mean always the whole context matters and all the results. If there are results in one area and another there is something less, as we said, it is impossible to have like maximum scores in every single area. So it is also for me very normal. If there are results in one area, then short-term fellowship, I do not see anything wrong in it.
Okay, so I think I wanted to say something very similar. That is, I have my own standards of review, which perhaps I shouldn't reveal, but my way of review. If we are talking about serious review, not just some internal application for a small-time university grant, which is like just look at the publications, that's all. But if we are talking about a serious evaluation process, I always try to read everything, like all the work that is submitted by the applicant. And if I see even a single good idea, I'm going to turn a blind eye towards all remaining evaluation criteria. The guy just went for 1 week to, say, Czech Republic, and that's his or her entire experience. And maybe that person has just one publication in some not very good journal, but there is something exciting. There is that spark. Then I'm going to say, yes, Czech Republic, 1 week, that's good, that's great. 100 points you get for that. But if I see, on the other hand, a person who has a very long record, but I can't find anything in this, anything interesting, anything challenging, then I'd say, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you have passed all the criteria, but don't count on 100% from me. I mean, you get 80. Okay, so.
No, that was for me too. Well, it connects somehow to the masters issue. There are some masters that are masters because of their past successes, and there is a kind of evaluation inertia, I would say. So people tend to evaluate others as regards their own standards by the time where and when they were doing stuff. So that part is the job of our Research Excellence Council to find the right evaluators to candidates. That's one part of my answer. And the second part is very up to date. If you look at the last 2 years, moving around the world was virtually impossible, be it for 1 day or more. It was just impossible. So people started to realize that it's not about having a formal stay somewhere. It's more about having an output from a relationship. So from experience, I can tell you that many people just don't travel because they can't, because they don't want to, because they couldn't, as many others, but they work together, and that's fine. Now, I like this comment of Przemek, that the one good idea. I think it's a valuable one. If you look at the profile of a candidate and you think that this individual never had any good idea, that sucks. That's really something. So probably you have to read another time to look for that idea, but then again, it's the job of the applicant to convince that she or he actually has had one or perhaps many ideas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your answers and patience and sense of humor and everything that you have presented here, actually. And I can see Julita sneaking towards me, so there is no other way for me just to pass the microphone to her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your input, very valuable. And I see that still some people are sitting here, and because this is the last common session for all participants. The next will be tomorrow at the end of the conference, and I know that some of you are leaving tomorrow early or in the morning. I would like to share with you some information just in case you will not be able to listen to them tomorrow, and I don't want to bother you during the gala dinner also. So after the conference and after we start to think again clearly about what had happened here, you will receive the proof of being here or the proof of presenting the paper. And if you need them in the future, you can print them. If not, please don't print them. Save the environment. That's why we also didn't print them for you. So you will have them, and you will be able to use them if needed. We also send you the extended abstract. Most of you provided the extended abstract to us, so we sent the extended abstract of your papers, presentation ideas. So you will be able to look at them and maybe touch the other just to build the team or whatever. And we also send you the link to the evaluation form, and please fill the evaluation form. We hope that we'll be able to organize this conference in 2024. So we would like to know what we can change and to make the conference better. And it's not. I don't want to say that we are going home now and we are not finishing the conference yet. We still have two sessions today, and then we go for a gala dinner, and we'll meet there, of course. So see you in the next session, during the next sessions, and see you at the gala dinner as well. So thank you. Oh, we can go for a coffee now, and maybe we'll start at past, okay? 15 minutes earlier, yes? So we'll finish 15 minutes earlier as well. So at the beginning we had some longer session, now we'll have shorter session. So see you within 15 minutes. Thank you.
Bardzo wam dziękuję.
Thank you.